Alright, Chris, it's Thursday night. It's time for episode 4 of 810, the PretendRaceCars.com podcast, and I gotta ask you something. While we're doing this, I'm torrenting the 1080p version of Disney's Little Mermaid. I gotta ask you, who is your favorite Disney princess?
Holy crap. How about we go the affirmative action correct way, and I'll say Pocahontas.
So you're filling quotas on today's episode, are you?
Yes, precisely.
Alright, well we're going to switch real quick here from Disney princesses back to our preferred topic of pretend race cars, and we'll get the ball rolling here on the Thursday, March 33rd, 2015. And Chris, you are the biggest outspoken opponent of iRacing on the internet. Your username on Virtual R in the comment section was waiting for AC. You shit-talked anyone who dissed iRacing, and you're back on racing IndyCars. You have some explaining to do.
Well, way to blow my cover on the waiting for AC. But yeah, I like the IndyCar. I think it's very, very interesting and very positive what they did to it. And you have to say that you liked it as well.
Yep. I mean, I got the pictures up there.
Yeah, I managed to get you on there. It's pretty interesting. I would say the one thing that jumps out to me is that after a few laps, it's like the first time in a long time that there's a car where you could say feels noticeably different once the tires are hot and, gaining heat in the tread. So you're actually forced on fast 1.5 and 2 mile tracks to lift, and if you don't, you're going to take the wall down. And I think it's pretty positive change. Instead of every track being, flat foot, and then you pass someone and they're going to just pass you right back because they got the mega draft. There's still a lot of mega draft, but if you don't know how to not hit the wall on corner exit, it's going to be useless to you. What did you think?
Well, I raced IndyCars for an absolute mammoth amount of time on iRacing. That's one of my preferred series. That and the K&N car. And I mean, for the longest time, there were restrictor plate packs at Iowa and Richmond, and that was in the old IW05 car. But like you said, you got me onto this, and I tried it at Michigan. There's aero push. You have to lift for the different lines. You can roll on the throttle or on the top groove. It's very un-iRacing-like, just in how it drives and how it races. I mean, the draft, you can slingshot around people, and this was a big deal that you couldn't do in the IW05 back on a few builds ago before the DW12 came out. What happened was you try and draft someone, and you could suck right up to their bumper underneath their wing. But when you try and pull the line and pass them and shoot by them with the slingshot effect, it didn't do anything. But now, with whatever the reworked draft model is, or whatever they've done last build, it's so un-iRacing-like, but it's fun. I mean, to compare it, I've been playing a lot of PS2 lately, and it's very similar to the Codemasters IndyCar games, just in the way it drives, the way the draft model works, the way you run in a pack with it. Like, it's so un-iRacing like, but it's so good. And at this point, I don't even really care if it's, ultra realistic or whatever, because I had fun with it. And the only reason I didn't race more is because I was playing other games,
That's the key word. It's fun. I haven't tried any of the stock cars yet, but this is fun enough that I'll keep doing it, keep giving it a chance. And if they add the new surface model, like there was a rumor that they're going to at some point this year, it might even get better. Might even make the oval cars better. And we're going to do a little switch of the topics right now. James, you've been playing Dirt 3, and it was patched after 2 years. Windows Live is pretty terrible and ruined the experience for a lot of people who maybe played it on the console, graduated to a PC, and wanted to get back into it with the real wheel. Tell me a little bit about the Complete Edition that came out.
Well, it started out, the Games for Windows Live release was a mess. I mean, for those who don't know, Games for Windows Live was Microsoft's answer to Steam, and kind of like an Xbox Live on the PC platform, but it never picked up steam. It never did anything. It never got popular. The functionality was kind of crappy. But anyway, a bunch of these games ended up moving to Steam eventually when Steam became, the platform for PC gaming. So all of a sudden you have this broken functionality for a service that doesn't exist anymore. And in the case of Dirt 3, it wasn't updated. So you'd get, Dirt 3 for $7 because it went on sale for ridiculous prices back in the day. And you'd get onto it, and there'd be stupid Games for Windows Live prompts. Sometimes certain things wouldn't work. A big thing for me was you couldn't buy some of the DLC, or a large portion of the DLC, meaning half the game was basically locked away. And people bitched for years to get this fixed. And now they finally fixed it on April Fool's Day. Of all the times they could do that, they just kind of dropped it on people. And I was pumped. The functionality works. They took all the GFWL stuff out of it. It's really good that the commitment Codemasters made to patching this game so long afterwards, compared to their missteps with the F1 series and the Colin McRae for mobile games. So it's really good to see them doing this. It's really good that this got finally put out there and people got to play it. Now, for the past few days, I've had a mixed bag actually playing with the game. It starts with, hey, I finally got to play with cars that I enjoyed playing because the DLC is great and all, and to have that for free is great. But there's two things I noticed first off. The first thing is, online is dead. And this, we reported on this today, really after I got home from work. Someone in the Steam forums has said that the way Codemasters does matchmaking with their online games isn't, the traditional R-Factor server browser way. It does it by region as if you're playing on Xbox Live. So what that means is, because I live in Edmonton, Canada, and there's not a lot of racing fans around here, when I go online to try and race against people, there's nobody to play against. I can still join parties with dudes from the UK and stuff like that, but I can't actually show up and, go through a list of all 1,700 people online and just join a race at random. Like, it won't let me do that. And that sucks because, on the flip side, the races I was able to get into last night when I first, got into the Complete Edition, were really good. The netcode was not iRacing tier, not R-Factor tier, but very close. I mean, I was doing bump and runs on guys in Rallycross, and I was moving them up the racetrack the amount I wanted to move them. During some of the stadium truck races, I mean, we could beat and bang, and it wasn't, people flying off in the stands. Like, it was really good. And you could tell that because the majority of users are wheel users, man, this was a lot of fun. But like I said, to start off the two negative points, the first negative point is that online, the matchmaking is just broken. You don't get matched up with anybody, and the Steam chart says there's 2,000 people online, and man, you go to the jam session and there's nobody. The second part of it, though, is that there's huge wheel problems. There's some sort of bug that makes it when you turn to the right, there's either no force feedback or the wheel automatically pulls to the right. Like, it's just a complete mess. Now, there's an override for this if you turn down the wheel strength and wheel weight settings in the options menu, but a lot of people don't want to do this, and I mean, for me, it's not an issue for me because I run a DFGT, and I have a really funky force feedback setup that kind of mirrors how my personal vehicle in real life drives, and it's really heavy power steering and that kind of garbage. But for guys that really rely on the game to adjust their wheel settings, widespread complaints that the wheels just aren't working and it's unplayable. And that's really sad because Dirt 3 probably is one of the greatest games that we've had in a long time, for any driving game, not just in the sim category, but for Simcade, for arcade. Man, this is worth, the $30 they're asking for it, once everything gets fixed. But man, it's kind of been a shitty launch. But that was a long time I spent talking about an arcade game, so we're going to kick it even more old school. And let you talk about an arcade game, Chris. I wasn't old enough to appreciate Xbox Live, because my mom didn't want me talking to strangers over the internet. But we're going to go back, I think, to 2003, to Project Gotham Racing 2. Thursday night, you have the floor. Tell us what was amazing about that game.
Oh, PGR 2 was probably one of the first more serious racing games in terms of online competitiveness that I played in. And if I had to say where I rank it in terms of fun, it'd be at the top of the list. There was just so many good cars for more of an arcade-based game. The online was fun. There was a lot of competition. It was one of the first games that started to forge, in my mind, groups of people who would seek each other out to play. Like, you'd have a list of people on your Xbox Live friends list that you would invite to come race with. PGR 3 was really, really well done. The graphics were good. The gameplay was good. The vehicles weren't too bad at all. There was a great selection of online tracks. PGR 4 was good, but I don't think it was good enough to keep you interested enough, keep you wanting to play. It was at a weird time too. Like, I feel like Forza 2, for guys who were looking for more of a sim, something closer to reality, Forza 2 really dominated the time frame between PGR 3 and PGR 4, and I hope I'm remembering correctly.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that time, don't think there was enough new or interesting or better about 4 to make it have the longevity to me that 2 and 3 did. Now, these games were made by Bizarre Creations, and I want to say that they had a hand. I can't confirm, but there was a great game called I think it was Rally Sport Challenge. Out on Xbox Original, and that game was unbelievably fun to play. And for a long time, we were just teased about how there was going to be a third one that came out, and it never did. And I just remember spending a boatload of time playing that game. I don't remember exactly what you wanted me to answer, but I hope that I got a little bit into that.
Well, it's like, to even expand on this topic a bit, I'm just thinking, another question I could ask you on this. Do you remember when PGR 4 came out? It was the week after, or the week before, Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4 dropped. Do you think PGR 4 was almost killed because of the popularity of Halo 3 and COD 4?
Well, those are just different genres for different people. Microsoft usually doesn't do a very, very good job of staggering their game releases. I'm pretty sure that Halo 4 came out literally a week before Call of Duty, the last go around with Halo, so it was a pretty dumb move on their part. I see that they slotted it in for Halo 5, obviously not racing related, but they slotted Halo 5 in at the end of October, which is where Battlefield usually releases their game if they're going to go up against Call of Duty. So I think they played it smart this time. Did they play it smart with PGR 4? Probably not. But like I said, I don't think there was enough going on or drastically different about that game compared to 3 and 2. Like, the Nürburgring on 3 was just awesome. Taking out Ferrari Enzo, Porsche 911 GT1. There's a couple of other ones just slipping my mind. Just
the Ford
supercars.
IndyCar concept? Or the Indigo, whatever they called it.
The GT90. Those were just fun cars to lap around the ring. And like I said, surprisingly, there was the physics really weren't that bad. I mean, it was a far cry from what we do on, what we could do on PC now, because you would just look to, like, find corners that you could jump the curb and jump, like, a whole section of track so that you get on top of the leaderboards. But for the content and the lack of options back in that time period, they were solid games, and I really enjoyed playing them. Kind of sad that, like, sometimes maybe all this sim racing, you just don't want to sit down, and for me at least, I know you can, but sit down and play like an arcade console-y kind of game for like a little bit. But let's move on and finish up with James. RaceRoom, Racing Experience, and Game Stock Car Extremer on the market. I'll admit, before we get you on, I did manage to get some better settings for Game Stock Car, and it feels a little bit better to me. Not great, still R Factor to me. 2 games, basically R Factor 2014, 2015. Which would you buy if you had to choose one?
Oh man, if I had to pick one, I think you really got to go with what both games do and what both games don't do. For a little background on both games, R3E started life as a free-to-play game, and after the Simbin bankruptcy and everything being sold off to the new company Sector 3, they really changed it into like a Race 07 type game. And I mean, a lot of people don't know this because they've already written off R3E as just, a crappy free-to-play game. But it really is, Race 07 version 2, Electric Boogaloo. And on the flip side, you have Game Stock Car Extreme, which is the closest thing to R Factor 2015 that you'll get. I mean, it's Riza Studios being given the keys to the R Factor Kingdom to develop the best third-party payware mods within the ISI G-Motor engine. So it really depends what you want, and that's how you decide which title to buy. RaceRoom Racing Experience has hands down the best content that you can get for what's essentially a payware R Factor mod. You have 3 classes of GT3 racing, including pretty much every ADAC car, every GT3 car that's really been in existence since the series inception. You have a list of tracks, including the DTM schedule, plus Bathurst, plus Sonoma, plus Indianapolis, my bad. You have Daytona prototypes, you have normal prototypes, you have, let me just think, you have a couple WTCC cars, you have several seasons of DTM cars, classic DTM cars, man, you have everything under one roof. The paywall is what gets me, though. One expansion, like the ADAC GT Masters expansion, $30. DTM experience, $30. So suddenly, just trying to flesh out the content for one game, because you're really not sure what it's going to handle, like, the cost kind of skyrockets really quick. And I mean, just extrapolating here, I'd say, though, the entire content list is around $200, which, I mean, most people want to get around R Factor's, $19.95 for free, and they just go and download a crack for it. So to pay $200 for what's essentially R Factor, when it really adds nothing new, I'm not going to say it's a ripoff, because what's in the game is really good, but $200 for R Factor is a bit pricey. Now, of course, there are promos and stuff like that, but you get what I'm saying. I mean, how often are you, or not how often, but how much are you going to keep rebuying R Factor over the years? On the flip side, you go with Game Stock Car Extreme. It's a fantastic R Factor mod. Even though it is just an R Factor mod, it's still a fantastic one. It has all the R Factor functionality. R3E doesn't really have support for long races. You can't even adjust the tire pressure. You can't do tire compounds. Game Stock Car can. And the force feedback, the series included in the game, the huge, more or less, F1 history starting from the 80s turbo cars up to now. The tracks are fantastic for what you can do in the G-Motor engine. And the fact that it is R Factor, that you can drop your player INI from R Factor into GSC Extreme, and it works. So at the end of the day, if you have to pick just one of these games, I'm going to have to say Game Stock Car, because despite the fact that most of the tracks are in South America, despite the fact that it really is focused around kind of obscure content and lots of open wheelers, it feels better, and it's more familiar to people who want to play R Factor, but a more refined R Factor. The downfalls with R3E end up, kind of putting the nail in the coffin. The fact that you have to buy so many expansions for it, the fact that the load times are kind of long, the fact that the track list you have to buy in packs, it starts being pricey, and people have already spent money on R Factor, and they've already spent money on Race, and they've already spent money on NASCAR 09, and they've already kept buying R Factor so many times over the years. I would rather, say, hey, Game Stock Car is an improvement on R Factor than say, oh yeah, you can just buy R Factor again.
Yeah, Game Stock Car, I did end up getting some settings that I enjoyed. Felt a little bit better to me. I haven't tried RaceRoom Racing Experience yet, but it's something that I would definitely like to do at some point. GTR 3, if done right, if that's in the cards, would be something that I'm extremely interested in, because I always thought that Race 07 was so underrated, and I guess you could say basically all of those expansions that were around that were very underrated, they felt, for R Factor, always felt better than just R Factor to me. So there's a lot of options for R Factor, and I just find it interesting that you'd think that maybe one of these days ISI, RaceRoom, or Game Stock Car would get it together to where they could actually be a big enough, serious enough threat to what you have at Assetto Corsa, what you have at iRacing, and maybe they'll get some drones like they have over at P-Cars. You never know.
Well, the way I've looked at it, in the past is I bought R Factor when I was in 8th grade in middle school in 2005. Got it at launch. like right when 1.0 came out. I even remember playing the demo online for R Factor just at Tobin Raceway runoffs with whatever front wheel drive RSX lookalike that they had. And I mean, if you would have came up to me when I was in middle school and said, yeah, when you're 22 and have a full-time job, you'll still be playing R Factor, I would have been like, man, what future are we going to be in for, you know? And that RaceRoom versus Stock Car Extreme, I cannot believe that we're fighting over, do you want to have R Factor with this coat of paint or R Factor with that coat of paint? Like, come on, you know?
Well, it gets back to a little bit earlier, and I guess we could end on this note. Sometimes you don't know how good something is until a developer can't come up with anything new or exciting for you, because I don't think I've ever played a shooter better than Call of Duty 4 or the old Rainbow Six Vegas, so there's some food for thought. That was almost 10 years ago at this point, both of those.
Well, I guess on that note, we'll call it quits for Thursday, March 33rd. Friday's Eve, episode 4, 810, the PretendRaceCars.com podcast. I'm James, that's over there is Chris, and we'll see you next time.
I'm a professional Assetto Corsa shill.